Going on to our next example. We want to find the ordered pair associated with negative 19 pi over 6. So a negative angle tells me I'm going to drop down. Denominator 6 says I have 6 equal pieces. So going half of a circle is 6 equal pieces. So that's 6, 12, 18, and I just need to go up 1/6 to 19. And that right there is where technically negative 19 pi over 6 is graphed. And if we want to look at our unit circle we have back up there in our notes, we can. Or we can realize that right here I have a very large x value and a very short y value. And that coordinate back there is the square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. And in quadrant 2, my x values are negative, my y values are positive. So after I've rotated this angle, where I've landed at is this coordinate on the unit circle. The sine value there is the y value, which is 1/2. The cosine value is the x value. And the tangent value is always the ratio, the y value divided by the x value, which is, in this case, if you do 1/2 times the reciprocal of your bottom, take those away, it's going to be 1 over the square root of 3. And if you rationalize your denominator, it's going to be the square root of 3 over 3 and negative. Okay? Let's see. The reciprocal of sine is cosecant. And a lot of this is just going to be a matter of y'all getting kind of practice with it. So cosecant is the 1 over your y value, which is reciprocal, so it's 2. Secant is 1 over your x, so the reciprocal of x. And again, leaves us with a denominator with a radical, so let's clean that out. So it's negative 2 square roots of 3 over 3. And then cotangent, let's write it as, let's say it's our x value divided by our y value. Let me running out of room just a second, so let me kind of let's take some of this away so I can get some more, a little bit more room for cotangent. Okay. You write tangent over here as negative square root of 3 over 3, and then cotangent, let's clean that up. So we want to take that top fraction, which is the square root of 3 over 2, and we want to divide by that, so by the 1/2, so negative square root of 3 over 2 times 2 over 1, take those away, and it's just the negative square root of 3. Okay, so this is just sine. Just remember that always deals with the y values, cosine's the x values, and tangent's a ratio. Cotangent's always the reciprocal of tangent, secant's the reciprocal of cosine, and cosecant's reciprocal of sine. It's just anytime you have a radical in denominator, you just might clean it up every now and then. Okay. One more time. Let's go with 14 pi over 3. Okay. Maybe this time I'll shrink it down for you guys. So 14 pi over 3, let's subtract off 2 pi. So we don't have to draw as much here. So 14 pi over 3 minus 6 pi over 3 is going to be 8 pi over 3. We're still positive, so let me subtract off 6 pi over 3 one more time. And it's the same thing as graphing 2 pi over 3. I'm going to divide each hemisphere into thirds, and all I needed to go is 2/3 around the way. So 2 pi over 3 would be 1/3 there, and 2/3. We're going to land right there at 2 pi over 3. Okay, so from there we just have to find our coordinate. Up there at 2 pi over 3, it's higher. We have a larger y value and a smaller x value. Smaller x value being the 1/2, the larger y value being the square root of 3 over 2. Quadrant 2, x values are negative. So here's the coordinate associated with 14 pi over 3, or you can say is associated with 2 pi over 3 because those are both the same angle. And then all I have to do is find the rest of it. Okay. So cosine is the x value there. And if you want me to go ahead and do it, the reciprocal of cosine is secant. or secant is the reciprocal of your x value, so it's -2. Sine is the square root of 3 over 2, so cosecant is the reciprocal of that, which is 2 over the square root of 3, and after cleaning it up, it'll be 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Tangent is my y value divided by my x value. So multiply by the reciprocal of the lower half and you'll get negative square root of 3. And then cotangent, I could either take the reciprocal of my tangent answer, or I could start out and say, okay, it's cosine divided by, which is my x value, divided by my sine value, which is my y value. So that would give us a -1 over the square root of 3. You can see right there, it's just the reciprocal. We got to clean it up. So it's negative square root of 3 over 3. And there you go. You see how I'm saying these connections, like cosine and secant, how they relate is they're just reciprocal functions of each other. Some very important information to learn, to keep in mind when we go throughout this process. Okay. All right, so example 4. For each of the following, we want to find the values of t where when t is between 0 and 2 pi, then we want to find out where we're landing. And 0 to 2 pi just basically says in one rotation, we want to find the values of t. So if we look at example A, it says, for what value of t does sine of t equal the negative square root of 2 over 2? Okay. Now remember, sine, what that deals with are my y values. So we could either go to that circle and figure out where are my y values along all those coordinates, the negative square root of 2 over 2, or we can even narrow it down a little bit more. My y values are only going to be negative in quadrants 3 and quadrants 4. And since this interval notation right here had pi written in it, I know that my answer has to be in radians, as I say right there. If it said t could be between 0 and 360, then you know to give your answers in degrees. But since it said t has to be between 0 and 2 pi, you know to give your answers in radians. Okay, so in quadrant 3 and 4, the only time it's ever going to be the square root of 2 over 2 is at pi over 4s. So t in quadrant 3, so the angle in quadrant 3 that's a pi over 4, which is going to be 5 pi over 4. And then in quadrant 4, in quadrant 3 it's 5 pi over 4, and then quadrant 4 it's 7 pi over 4. And there you go. That's all they're looking for. It's basically saying that if you go to the coordinate once you've rotated 5 pi over 4, you're going to get a y value of the negative square root of 2 over 2. Or if you rotate 7 pi over 4, you're going to get a y value in that coordinate of negative square root of 2 over 2. Same thing. All right, part B, you have cosine. Those are our x values. When do the x values equal 1/2? Well, it's positive. So my x values are positive in quadrants 1 and quadrant 4. So we're getting 2 answers again this time. All right. So in quadrant 1, the first time I approach an x value to be 1/2, it's actually at pi over 3. In quadrant 4, where I have an x value of 1/2, it looks like it's going to be 5 pi over 3. And nothing else, just go back to your chart so you can check it out and make sure that when you rotate through those angles that you actually land on a coordinate that has 1/2 as x values. Okay? Finishing up with these last two right here. Tangent. Okay? So tangent is the ratio of basically my y value divided by my x value. Okay? And for tangent to equal 0, that means specifically that my x value can't be 0. So I can't ever divide by 0, otherwise it would have to say undefined right there. What that specifically means is my y value can only equal 0. Okay, so as I go around that circle, where are my coordinates that have a y value of 0? And in other words, where my height is 0. And the only time where I have my height that's 0 is on the x-axis. So the x-axis technically is at 0 pi, or it's at pi. And there you go. All right. And last but not least, we have our secant value. I like to know my coordinates as cosine and sine, maybe tangent. So the first thing I'm going to think of is if secant is this, that means the reciprocal of secant is cosine. So the reciprocal of secant is cosine. Let's take the reciprocal of that right side. Okay, these two things are the exact same thing. For secant to be the negative 2 over the square root of 3, it's the same thing if I asked you when is cosine going to equal the negative square root of 3 over 2. It's the exact same thing. So this is dealing with our x values. And x values are negative in quadrants 2 and quadrant 3. Okay. Well, in quadrant 2, cosine is going to have that negative square root of 3 over 2 as its x value in that coordinate at, let's see, that's going to be 5 pi over 6. And then in quadrant 3, it's going to have that negative value there at 7 pi over 6. And those are my two answers for T for that last example.